Hey everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be doing the Boogeyman Izuku Midoriya, My Horror Academia series, movie. The creator of this What If is Toxic Blood 18. If you like the video make sure to like, subscribe and share the video with your friends. Now on to the What If. Chapter 1, Torment. I'm sorry Mrs. Midoriya, but I'm afraid your son will never develop a quirk. That sentence changed Izuku's life forever. His dad left him without saying goodbye and blaming his mother for their son's defect. Bakugo and the other children started picking on him for being quirkless, giving him the name Deku, which means useless. Even his own mother couldn't answer him when he asked her if he could still be a hero despite being quirkless, leaving him in tears, crying himself to sleep that night. He eventually stopped talking to people, not letting out any of his emotions other than a blank expression. The glint in his eyes had revealed a world of loneliness, while the look on his face revealed a world of despair, as he went every day going through the same hell over and over again. He never fought back against Bakugo or the other kids when they bullied him. Instead he just usually took whatever beating they were gonna give him and then just go on with his day like nothing happened. For 2 years this was his life, a horrible cesspool of suffering that seemed to have no end until one day. October 31st, 2007, it was Halloween night and Izuku was getting ready for trick-or-treating, the one night of the year he actually liked because he got to dress up as his favorite hero all might, even though he already did that on a regular basis, but this time he would get candy for it, though he would still try to avoid Bakugo and his other classmates if he wanted to keep his candy and not ruin the one night he actually liked. Aw man, I can't get the cape to stay on right. Every time he tried to tie it himself it would fall off, so he ran out of his room and headed to his mother's room, but stopped when he heard her talking to someone on the phone. He wasn't the type to eavesdrop, but he wanted help, so he listened in on her and waited for her to finish. Izuku has been feeling very bad lately. He hasn't been very talkative and he's distanced himself from me and all his friends. He didn't want to hear this, but for some reason he just kept on listening. I know, the women at the salon were talking about me behind my back about Izuku, and not only that, a lot of the other women are avoiding me too because I have a quirkless son. With that statement any joy Izuku had left him. He decided to just go back to his room, take off his costume and just go to sleep, but then he heard his mother say something that he thought he would never hear her say. I just sometimes wish I never had a baby. Izuku stood there processing what he had just heard in his head. Why would she say that or even think something like that? Mothers are supposed to love their sons no matter what and not wish they didn't have them. Soon his head was filled with lots of voices. Some insulted him for being worthless and causing his mother pain, while others tried to calm him down and try to make him feel better, but then out of all the voices one stood out the most. Grab the big knife from drawer in the kitchen. When this voice spoke to him all the other voices ceased from his mind. He decided to follow the instruction the voice gave him as he walked into the kitchen and grabbing the big knife from the drawer, he waved it around looking at its features before the voice spoke again. Put on your All Might mask, then enter your mother's room without her noticing. Izuku put on his mask and did what the voice told him, entering his mother's room without spooking her. She was sitting down brushing her hair while wearing her witch costume that was really short, revealing a lot of her legs and chests. Go up behind her slowly. He did what the voice told him to do. He slowly walked up behind her but stopped when he was right on her. He then just stood there staring at her, waiting for the voice to tell him the next command, but then his mother noticed him when she looked in the mirror. Izuku honey, go wait outside, okay? Mommy is almost done getting ready, okay? He just stood there staring at her. She noticed this, turning around to look at her son. Izuku, stab her now. Izuku didn't even hesitate as he shoved the knife into his mother's stomach. Stab her again, the voice demanded, and Izuku followed as he stabbed her again, causing her to fall to the floor, begging him to stop. Do it again. He stabbed her, this time in her chest, and again 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 and again. And again 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 and again. The room was painted red with the blood. Izuku just stood there staring at his mother's corpse with the same emotionless expression on his face, waiting the voice to speak to him again, but he heard nothing as he watched the pool of blood get bigger and bigger around his mother's corpse. Soon he could hear police sirens outside his apartment building. I guess the neighbors heard the screams. He looked at his mother one last time before heading out of his apartment. As he walked to the elevator he looked over the railing and saw the police had just arrived, and it caught the attention of nearby trick-or-treaters, causing them to circle around the cops. Stand back everyone please, nothing to see here. I don't know why the police always say that to crowds when there's clearly something to see, or else why are they there? Also, what is the purpose of the police exactly? They're not registered to use their quirks, so are they like glorified hall monitors? Izuku asked himself these questions as he walked into the elevator and heading down to meet them. As the door opened, Izuku walked out into the parking lot as everyone stared at him as he walked a few feet in front of the police before stopping and standing still like he had been frozen in ice. Suddenly a man in a trench coat walked up to Izuku, grabbing his All Might and taking it off, revealing his face. He still had the bloody knife in his hand, but the cop calmly disarmed him, taking it out of his hand slowly, and that's when the trench coat man saw the boy's calm and quiet smile that was disturbing. The trench coat man looked back towards the other officers. Take this kid down to the station. Two police officers grabbed Izuku and put him in the back seat of a police car while the trench coat man and the other officers went to go see the horror in Izuku's apartment. 10 years later, so this kid butchered his mom on Halloween night dressed as All Might. That's sick. Two guards were walking down a hallway passing many cells containing mental patients, but not the one they were looking for. Yeah, it's fucking weird, alright, but the weirdest part is that he hasn't talked for 9 years even though he can. Well, that and all the All Might memorabilia in his room. You would think a guy who worships a hero like that would want to become one himself even if he is quirkless. The one guard looked shocked. Wait, this kid is quirkless, as in he doesn't have a quirk? They had reached the cell they were looking for as the other guard began to whisper, yes, that's what quirkless means, rookie, but don't say it to his face, okay? We're here, so act professional. They both nodded in agreement. Before they unlocked and opened the cell door, they were then greeted by a green-haired boy staring at them as he just stood there. He had green eyes, but dark bags were under them and his hair was super messy and unkempt. Even though he was short, he was built for someone his age. Hey Midoriya, how are we doing today? The green-hair boy didn't say anything, instead he just stood there chained up so he wouldn't attack them, looking down with the same blank expression as the guard continued, well, I come to bring you your dinner, hope you like it, it's fish sticks with peas and macaroni. The guard put Izuku's food on a nearby stool before backing up a little. Izuku didn't try move though, instead he just continued standing there, and it was pissing off the rookie. Hey, didn't you hear him? It's dinner time, so eat. The rookie pulled out his baton planning to beat the boy, but was stopped by the other guard. There's no use in beating him, it doesn't take any effect on him anymore. The rookie put his baton away and walked around the room admiring all the All Might posters and action figures until he noticed a picture of Izuku as a kid and a small-looking angry boy. Hey, I recognize this kid. The rookie held up the picture showing Izuku and the other guard. It's that boy who won the UA Sports Festival last year. I got to see it live and it was awesome. Izuku jumped at the rookie trying to get the picture back, but the chains kept him from doing so. What's wrong? Do you want the picture back? You're gonna have to reach for it. The guard toyed with Izuku, putting the picture right in his reach before swiping it away. Listen rookie, don't do that, you're gonna make him mad, and the last time he got mad he killed a nurse with plastic spoon. The rookie immediately stopped what he was doing and put the picture back after hearing what the other guard said, but Izuku had broken free from the chains using his pure strength and tackled the rookie guard and began strangling him. The other guard pulled out his baton and hit Izuku in the back of the head, but it had no effect as the green-haired boy threw the rookie across the room like he was nothing and turned around to look at him. Jesus Christ. The guard tried to run away, but he was grabbed and thrown to a wall where Izuku began bashing the back of the guard's skull and until it caved in. Once he was done, he stopped and watched as the body slid down the wall to the floor. Then Izuku looked over to see the rookie cop slowly trying to crawl out the door for help. He quickly walked over and slammed the door into the rookie's ribcage, causing him to vomit out large amounts of blood as Izuku kept slamming the door over and over again, similar to how he killed his mother. Once he was satisfied with his kill, he stopped and stared at the body for a few seconds before reaching down and searching the corpse to find the keys, and once he had them he left his cell and looked around at the hallway of cells. Then he heard the voice go to the end of the hall to the panel on the wall. Izuku smiled, seemingly glad to hear the voice again, mainly because it drowned out the other voices that seemed to never stop talking to him. Once he got to the panel, he waited for his next instruction. Put the key in that unlocks all the cell doors at once. He did what he was told, releasing all the inmates in the ward. A few seconds later an alarm started going off and guards came rushing in as the inmates began rioting and fighting them off with whatever they could get their hands on to fight with. Izuku just walked through the crowd all the way to the entrance where he was met by 2 more guards. Return to your cell now, the one guard yelled, but Izuku just kept walking towards them. But when he tried to hit the boy with his baton, Izuku grabbed and twisted his arm, breaking it. He then noticed the other guard was loading a shotgun, so he picked up and threw the injured guard, knocking both of them unconscious. Izuka then walked outside for the first time in years, noticing the outside world and how beautiful it was. Hot wire a car? The voice said, snapping the boy out of his trance. Izuka did what he was told, breaking a window of a nearby car without anyone seeing him or hearing him. He didn't have to hotwire the car because the keys were in the visor. He didn't know how to drive, but he gave it his best shot, starting it up and putting it in drive before hitting the gas as he rammed through the gates of the facility, heading down the road. Good job, Izuku. Now head to Musutafu and Kilkaken. Izuku drove down the road, heading to his home city, the place he grew up and suffered, but before he could do any more killing he needed to make some stops first. Chapter 2, Villain. Beep, 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 smack. Bakugo smacked his alarm clock and lamp right off the nightstand, trying to stop the annoying beeping. He rolled over to his side and looked at the mess he had made. "Ah shit, that's the third lamp and fourth alarm clock I broke in the past 2 weeks. I got to stop doing this before I go broke replacing them." He got out of bed and cleaned up his mess, then got dressed for class. Knock knock knock. Bakugo looked over at his door, not wanting any visitors. "Go away." Knock knock knock. Bakugo was getting really annoyed now. "Go the fuck away." Knock knock knock. "That's it. I'm kicking your ass, who's ever is behind that door." Bakugo walked over to his door and opened it, planning to kill whoever was on the other side. Prepare to boo. It was Kaminari wearing a skull mask, waiting for a scared reaction from Bakugo. Instead he was met with a fist to his face, knocking him down flat on his ass. Mineta was laughing to the point he was crying. And Jiro was just standing there with her phone out recording. "Fuck you, broke nose," Kaminari said, taking off the mask, blood rushing out of nose. "I told you this would happen." Jiro stopped recording and helped her injured friend up. "What the hell, Bakugo? You just broke my fucking nose, you fucking psycho." He got up and looked at Bakugo, who was not happy. "I said I was going to kick whose ever ass was behind my door, so you had a chance. Don't complain about it now." Jiro helped Kaminari down the hall, continuing her "I told you this was going to happen" explanation when Bakugo noticed Mineta was just standing there. "What the hell are you still doing here, you little purple shit? Get the hell out of my sight." Mineta started walking away, not because he was listening to the explosive boy, but because he wanted a head start. "Whatever you say, villain." Bakugo's eyes filled with rage at the comment as his hand began to spark. "What did you say, you?" Before he could grab the small purple child, he was already too far down the hallway. Since Bakugo arrived in UA, the others in his class took note of his violent tendencies, especially during training sessions where he would yell out things like, "I'm going to all your break limbs. I'm going to murder your ass," and everyone's favorite die. Even during the UA Sports Festival he was booed after every match for the sadistic way he took pride in hurting others. The kidnapping didn't help either, in fact it made him more violent towards others even after they were saved. Bakugo finished up his morning routine and headed down to the common area, where he found Okako and Itza sitting on the couch watching the news, and Yaeyorozu, Tetsu, Kirishima, and Ashido were eating breakfast. "Yo, Bakugo, want some breakfast?" Kirishima handed him a breakfast burrito and smiled. Bakugo took it and continued on his way, but then he was greeted by the class president. "Good morning, Bakugo. Would you like to watch some TV with us?" Itza attempted friendship with him, but it never really worked out. "Fuck off, Four Eyes." Bakugo pushed him aside and headed out as Itza returned to his seat on the couch next to Okako. "Why do you even try to be his friend? You know he's just going to deny you." Itza sighed, for she was right. He was always going to be like this. "I don't know, let's just relax on our day off." Okako looked very worried at her friend. "You want to relax? Usually you would suggest we study rather than just relax." Itza began flipping through the channels, leaning back in his seat. "It's Halloween and the teachers gave us the day off, and I'm not in the mood to study, so let's just watch some TV for a bit and enjoy our day." Okako didn't see a reason to argue with him, so she just leaned back in her seat and waited for Itza to pick something to watch. When he stopped on the news, there was a anchorwoman wearing a pretty gray suit standing outside a guarded facility. "Last night at the Garuskant mental institution, prisoners broke out of their cells and started a riot. The guards at the facility were able to put an end to, however there were a few casualties and one escaped patient, but the identity of this man has not been released yet. As we wait for new information on the story, I'm Nozomi, as my reporting live for Channel 10 News." An escaped mental patient. just what this Halloween needed. Kaminari said, holding a bloody paper towel up to his nose while Jiro followed after him. Oh my god Kaminari, what happened to you? The electric hero wanted to make up a story but Jiro beat him to it. He tried to scare Bakugo and paid the price. Everyone giggled, trying not to offend their injured friend, but it was too late for that. Screw you guys. Kaminari sat down with Jiro and watched the news, but one question was stuck in Kaminari's head. You don't think that escaped mental nutjob is gonna come here, do you? Everyone thought about it for a second before Itza finally responded, that would be highly unlikely. He's all the way in Garusant and that's like a 4-hour drive, and I don't think he knows drive, mainly because he's from the insane asylum for those whose minds are nearly gone, but there is a small possibility he could, so I guess we'll just have to be careful then when we go out. Everyone agreed, but Itza had his own question to ask. The real question you should ask is, who is the patient that escaped? Meanwhile downtown, please don't kill me www. Izuku stabbed the woman in the chest, then threw her to the ground. He picked up the bag of McDonald's she dropped before he dragged her into the alley without anyone noticing and killed her. He tore it open like a savage animal and began eating anything that was in there, including drinking some of the sauce. Packets, boy you sure are hungry. Izuku didn't jump from the voice, instead he dropped the barbecue sauce and turned around slowly to see a blonde girl wearing a schoolgirl uniform. Saw what you did there to that woman and I'm impressed. She waited for a thank you to come from the green-haired boy, but he just stood there staring at her with those lifeless eyes of his. Not much of a talker, are you? That's okay, it's still nice to meet you. I'm Toga and I'm with the League of Villains, and we need people like you to do assignments for us, and you'll be paid quite handsomely too, so what do you say? Izuku didn't care for this and just turned around, but before he could leave the alley she yelled to him, we can give you food and drink. Izuku stopped and turned back around, but under one condition. She waited for him to say, what's the condition? But she remembered he doesn't talk. Oh yeah right, you don't talk. The condition is you must hold my hand the whole way there. Izuku stood there confused and turning red because of her offer. He didn't know what to do until he heard the voice in his head again. Take the offer, you're starving. We'll continue with our hunt later, plus you get to hold hands with a cute girl. Izuku blushed harder as he walked over to Toga, then reached out his hand. Toga smiled and jumped up and down in excitement as she grabbed his hand and dragged him to Villain's hideout. The hideout wasn't anything special, it was just a old abandoned warehouse they fixed up. She dragged him in and led him to what seemed to be a kitchen and dining room where 3 villains were playing around drunk. Sit down and I'll make you something to eat, okay? She left Izuku to go into the kitchen, leaving him alone with the 3 other villains, and they took notice of this too. The 3 walked up to him holding bags of what appeared to be Halloween masks. You must be one of the new guys. Welcome to the League. He reached out for a handshake, but Izuku just stared straight ahead, not giving the 3 any attention. Hello, is anyone there? The villain waved his hand in front of Izuku. He finally gave in and looked at 3 villains. So he can hear. I thought you might have been deaf or something. Izuku just stared at the 3 men. One clearly had the ability to shoot bullets out of his hand, while the other 2 were twins who looked like panthers. Listen, we just got finished robbing this Halloween store and we stole a shitload of masks. Do you want one? Izuku thought about it for a second and decided that was the best way to get around town without being noticed, and by now the news of him escaping would have gone public by now. He grabbed the bag and started searching through it. Let's see, we got a Hello Kitty mask, a Green Witch mask, a pumpkin face mask, a Jushin Thunder Liger mask, tiger mask, a bunny mask, a kabuki mask, a dinosaur mask, a William Shatner mask, and finally a Izuku stared at it, the perfect mask, an All Might mask. Oh boy, I think he found the one he likes. The villains smiled and went back to their fun as Izuku smiled sadistically at the mask. What you smiling at? Toga had come back from the kitchen with a sandwich and a glass of what seemed like grape soda. Oh, I see you found a mask you like. That's how I acted when I found my perfect villain costume. Maybe you should try it on. Izuku was sort of listening. He kind of began stuffing his face as soon as she put the plate down. Once he was done, he walked over to a nearby mirror and put on the mask. He looked at himself for a while, admiring the way it looked on him, the blonde hair, the muscular face, and the pearly white smile. Izuku, this will be our mask. Once a symbol for peace is now a symbol of our rage, of our hate, of our anger, of our revenge on a world that thought it could just throw us away like trash. We will show them all what we are capable of, what you are capable of, starting with Kaken. Izuku Midoriya. When he heard her say his name, the voice disappeared and he broke out of his trance-like state and looked at Toga. "That's what your jumpsuit says. I'm guessing that's your name." Izuku turned around to face her. He looked into her eyes and saw the sparkles of happiness in her eyes, and the excitement from earlier was still there on her face as she smiled at him. "You know usually if I see someone in a All Might mask I tend to kill them or want to kill them, but for you I'll make an exception, my little Izu might." She couldn't tell, but he was blushing hard under the mask, but the moment was ruined by the shooting hand villain. "Wait, your name is Izuku Midoriya?" Izuku turned his attention to him. "You're that kid that killed his mother 10 years ago. I remember watching that on the news. You brutally stabbed your mom to death with knife dressed as All Might. They sent you to mental asylum and you must be the one who broke out last night during the raid." Izuku did not like hearing his life story, mainly because it wasn't a happy one. Like he envisioned when he was a kid. He walked up to the villain, pulled out his knife and stabbed him right in his throat, but he didn't take it out. Instead he dug it deeper into the throat, causing blood to gush out, and with one swift movement he sliced open his whole throat, squirting blood all over him and his new mask. He then turned his attention to the Panther brothers. "Look, we don't want any trouble. Yeah, we don't care what you did, we just want money and beer." Izuku didn't care for what they had to say, for all he wanted to do was feed his bloodlust. As he walked over to them, realizing they had to fight, one of the brother attempted to hit him, but Izuku blocked the strike and stabbed him right in his stomach, repeated before shoving it in deep and twisting it around. "I'm getting the fuck out here." The other Panther brother tried to run away, jumping over a table and heading to the door, but Izuku saw this as he pulled the knife out of the brother he killed and threw it, connecting with his back. "Aw shit, 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 shit." He squirmed in pain as he looked towards Toga, who watched and looked actually shocked at what she was seeing. "Please help me. Please, he's going to kill me." Izuku put his foot on the poor Panther guy's head and began pressing down on it until it caved in, causing blood and what was left of his brain out his nose and eye holes, popping out the eyes in the process. Once he was done killing the three, he walked over to Toga, who looked surprised at this. He then stopped at the body of the shooting hand villain, kicking over his body, then plunging his knife into his chest, cutting him open. As Izuku reached and ripped out the heart, he put his knife away and walked over to Toga, grabbing her hand and giving her the heart. She looked down at admiring it. "I love you, Izubear. Does this mean you love me too?" She looked up to see he was gone, just vanished into thin air. Suddenly Shigaraki walked in the room, looking at Toga and the three horribly mangled bodies. "What fuck happened in here?" Toga just started hugging herself, holding the severed heart as closely to hers as she could get it. She then looked at Shigaraki as she simply said this: "I'm in love." Chapter 3. This is Halloween. Oh my god, who could have done such a thing? Officer Tamakawa said, looking horrified at the scene of a young woman brutally stabbed to death in an alley. "Could have been anyone, that's why we're here." Right behind the cat officer was Detective Tainama, lighting his cigar. Whoever it was must have been very hungry. Tamakawa and Tainama looked over at Detective Tsukashi, who was investigating a ripped open McDonald's bag with scraps of lettuce and chicken every around it. He put down the ripped bag and walked over to the body of the woman and picked up her purse. He looked around inside it and found her money was still untouched. He then looked at the women, searching to see if any jewelry was taken off, but none were. This attack was clearly just for the food. All her money seems to be untouched and all her jewelry is still on her. Tainama was annoyed that Tsukashi was figuring things out before he was, while Tamakawa watched in amazement. Wait, if this whole thing was for food, then why kill her? He could have simply just threatened her with a knife and took the food. Tsukashi inspected the multiple knife wounds on the girl while thinking about the question his fellow detective just asked before he got the answer. "You're right about one thing, Tainama. He didn't have to kill her." He paused for a second. He wanted to kill her. The two thought about it for a second and came to the same conclusion as Tsukashi. The coroner finally came and began preparing the body for transport when a strange American man arrived on the scene but was being held back by the police. "Let me through, goddammit. I need to speak with Detective Tsukashi. Lots of people's lives are in danger." He managed to break free from the officer's grasps and ran up to the detective. "Detective, my name is Samuel Loomis and I have some information. I know the identity of the kill dash." Before Loomis could finish, he was tackled by the two officers, but Tsukashi signaled them to let go of him. "Who, and what do you know about the person who did this?" Loomis quickly brushed off his before explaining. "First, you're not looking for a man but a boy named Izuku Midoriya. He's around 17 years old with green messy hair, and he's the one who escaped from the mental asylum in Garuskant." The three were shocked at what they were hearing. "You're telling me a boy did this?" Loomis sighed before going on. "Sadly yes, This boy had a very troublesome childhood. His dad left him, kids bullied and tortured him, and his mother wished she never had him, and 10 years ago today he killed her in cold blood. When Loomis mentioned that last part, Tsukachi remembered that night and the boy. He remembered how the boy showed no emotion whatsoever and seemed not care or notice the fact that he had just murdered his own mother and he was covered in her blood from head to toe. Okay, Mr. Loomis, since you know so much about this Midoriya character, then why is he here? Tainama still seemed annoyed that everyone knew what was going on except for him. I don't know what he's planning to do, but I have an idea where he might be going. Tsukachi grabbed Loomis and dragged him into the passenger side of his cop car. Once the doors were closed, the detective looked at him with a serious grin and asked him, "Tell me where you think he's going." Loomis didn't hesitate to tell him anything. "We should try the apartment building he grew up in first. It's a start. We could also try Alderai Elementary School where he was bullied, and if we don't find him there we could try the Let's Be Heroes arcade." Tsukachi looked at him with curiosity after he named that last location. "I used to be Midoriya's therapist, and when he still talked to me he mentioned something about his favorite game that he used to play to make him feel better when he was sad. It's a long shot, but he might be there." Tsukachi grabbed the ham radio and made the call. "This is Detective Tsukachi and I have a description on our murder suspect. His name is Izuku Midoriya, age 17. He has green messy hair which can easy point him out in a crowd. Suspect is armed and dangerous, so be careful. I need a unit to go check out the apartment complex on the west side of town and another unit to check out the arcade. We'll check out the school, over." He hung up the radio and began to drive. "Tell me everything else you know about the boy." Loomis took out a flask and took a long sip before he started. "I met him 10 years ago. I was told there was nothing left, no reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 7-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, and the emotionless eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 5 years trying to reach him, and then another 5 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil." After that, the two went quiet with chills running down their spines as they continued the drive to the school. Meanwhile at the Rose Hill apartment building, Bad Scary Movie Halloween Marathon. 2 stoners were opening up boxes of horror movies trying to find the perfect bad film to start their marathon with. Note: the films I'm about to mention are real movies that even though they're bad I recommend you watch. Dude, I got it. Attack of the Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Dude. He held it up to his friend's face but was met with disapproval. Dude, I said bad horror. Here, how about Demonic Toys? It's a classic example of bad horror. The stoners kept digging through their collection of horror films, pulling out many would consider hidden gems. Let's see, here we got The Valley of Gwanji, Splice, Santa Jaws, Basket Case, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Oh, that's a good one, we should start with that. He put the movies in stack on the couch and waited for his friend's approval. Those are good choices, but I found Project Metal Beast, Puppet Master, Reptilicus, Beast of Yucca Flats, Evil Brain from Outer Space, The Legend of Boggy Creek, The Crater Lake Monster, Street Trash, and Killjoy the Clown. Geez, this is hard. The two were about to give up their marathon idea, but then they found the perfect film to start with. They pulled the movie out together, holding it up to the light, praising it like they were holding baby Jesus in their hands. The name of the film was Manos, Hands of Fate, one of the worst films ever made in the history of film. Put that movie in the DVD player right fucking now. They quickly put the movie in and jumped on the couch, but before they could hit play, knock knock knock. They looked at the door, then back at each other. I'm not getting that. Well, I'm not getting it either. The two knew what they had to do. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. The loser stoner got up and walked over to the door. He opened it to find a blood-covered Izuku wearing an All Might mask. Dude, trick or treating doesn't start until 7. Also, even though your costume is really scary and well done, it's a bit insensitive, you know, with All Might retiring last year. Izuku just stared at him, not moving at all. Do you want tea candy or something? Before the stoner could finish, Izuku slashed his throat and threw him out of the way. The other stoner saw this and immediately jumped off the couch and got into a fighting stance. You bastard, I'll kill you. He charged at Izuku, activating his quirk, which turned his fists into metal as he went in for a punch. Izuku simply moved out of the way and watched as the stoner jumped right past him, tripped over his own feet and fell over the guardrail, falling several stories before landing on a car. Izuku looked over the rail at the dead stoner before going inside the apartment. He noticed how the apartment hadn't changed much since he lived there. As he headed down the hall to where his room used to be while reminiscing about his childhood, he opened the door to his room and looked in disgust as his room was now covered in legalized marijuana flags, rock band posters and clothes all over the floor. Yug, what slob lived in here? The voice in Izuku's head was equally disgusted at the sight of the room. Izuku walked through the room over to the closet and opened it to find weed growing under LED lights. The boy didn't care about the stuff as he picked up the plants and threw it out of the closet so he could get to a loose floorboard that was underneath. He removed the board and pulled out a metal box that contained some money, an All Might action figure and a picture of him as a little kid with his mother and father when they were still together. Izuku sat on the bed as he stared at the picture. Suddenly all the voices in his head began crying and yelling at him all at the same time, causing him mass amounts of pain and falling to the ground, grasping his ears trying to block out the noise. Suddenly a voice spoke to Izuku, blocking out the others, but it wasn't the usual voice that had guided him. Instead it was the voice of a woman calling out to him, "Izuku, come, it's time for dinner." He looked up to see his mother standing in the doorway. "You can play with your action figures later, now come to the table. I made your favorite food, katsudon." She walked away down the hall as Izuku followed her. He walked into the kitchen and watched his mother set 3 plates on the table. "Your father should be coming home soon, Izuku. How does mommy look?" "You look great, mom." Izuku down next to him to see himself as a little boy. There was a sudden knock on the door and the little Izuku ran over to the door yelling, "Daddy's home, Daddy's home." Izuku looked at the door waiting for the younger version of him to open it to reveal his father, but when he opened it 2 policemen were there. One was normal looking, while the other was Tamakawa. "Freeze, put your hands the air," they yelled, but Izuku just stood there doing nothing. "Drop the weapon or we will open fire." Izuku was about to take his chances and charge them, but the voice returned to him. Izuku put down the knife down. He was shocked to hear that, but he did as followed, dropping the knife. "Get on your knees and put your hands behind your head." Izuku did what the cops said and got on his knees, putting his blood-soaked hands behind his head. Tamakawa signaled his partner to handcuff him while he went to go check on the body of the stoner to see if he was still alive. The cop put away his gun and pulled out a pair of handcuffs, but as soon as he touched Izuku's arm, the voice in the boy's head quickly spoke to him, "Kill him now." Izuku elbowed the cop in the gut and threw him into the TV head first. Tamakawa saw this and fired a shot at Izuku, hitting him in his arm, but the boy seemed unaffected by it as he started slowly walking towards the cat-looking officer. Tamakawa was shocked at how the boy took the bullet to the arm and seemed unfazed, but he quickly snapped out of it and tried to fire off another shot, but something happened. "Oh, you got to be kidding me." The gun jammed and his face was greeted by Izuku's fist. He then picked up the cat officer like he was nothing and threw him over the guardrail and watched him as he hit the concrete. "Nice work, Izuku. I wish that Toga girl was here to see this. I bet we would have ruined her panties." Izuku was blushing under his mask again. "Anyways, no more side trips. We need to kill Kikin, so get a move on to his house or the school. He has to be at either or." Izuku went back into the apartment and picked up his knife. He then looked around at the apartment one last time before leaving and heading to Kikin's house. At the UA dorms, "Mina, what are you planning?" Yayorozu looked at Ashido, who was hanging up Halloween decorations in the common area. "I'm throwing a Halloween party for everyone. There's gonna be snacks, dancing and a costume contest where the winner gets a special award." Yayorozu was a little worried about the mystery reward part, but she liked the idea of a party, so she agreed to help. Ashido smiled and handed her a bunch of flyers. "Pass these out to everyone in the building, please. Thank you so much." She took the flyers and walked down the halls of the building, handing them to everyone until she was out of flyers. Once she was out, she headed downstairs where she met up with Ashido again. "Great, now that you're done with that, can you make me the things on the paper?" Yayorozu looked at the list and sighed. This was going to be a long day for her. Chapter 4, Izuku's Madness. Well, Izuku were here. Izuku was behind a tree looking at Bakugo residence from across the street. It was starting to get dark and trick-or-treaters would be coming out soon for their candy, so he had to do this fast. "Okay, here's the plan. You go up to the front door and ring the doorbell. Kill whoever answers, whether it's Mitsuki or Masaru. Once one is dead, go in and kill the other, then Kikin. He'll be the hardest to kill, but we're ready for that, so go now and complete the task we've trained for." Izuku walked out from behind the tree and headed across the street. "You got this, just keep oh my god, watch out." Izuku and the voice was so focused on the house and the task at hand that he didn't see the car. He was hit and then launched a few feet before landing hard on the ground. "Why didn't you look both ways before crossing?" That's like the first thing you do before crossing a road. You may be smarter than most kids, but for God's sake you can do stupid shit. As the voice in his head went on and on complaining about his actions, Izuku just laid there in pain, not knowing if he could still move his arms or legs, but those thoughts went silent when he saw who had hit him. Oh my god, Masaru, you just hit a trick-or-treater. Don't you think I know that, Mitsuki? As they argued, Izuku attempted to move but had little luck as everything hurt. No amount of training could prepare you for being hit by a car as he passed out trying to get up. Oh, thank God he's alive, let's get him in the house. The couple ran over and picked the boy up, carrying him inside the house and laying him on the couch. Call an ambulance and go find the first aid kit. I think it's somewhere in the bathroom, and hurry please. Masaru ran off to find it while Mitsuki stayed with the boy. I'm so sorry this happened, don't worry, help is on the way, just lay here and try to relax, okay? She began to look at him more closely, noticing the bleeding hole in his arm. She then took notice at his jumpsuit and how authentic it looked, and then she saw the name that was printed onto it, Izuku Midoriya, in all white letters. She didn't say anything as she looked at the All Might mask the boy was wearing and took it off, revealing the boy's face to her, and she knew it was him. Izuku, wake up. The boy opened his eyes and immediately pulled out his knife and stabbed her in the chest. She fell back as he rolled off the couch, landing on top of her, pulling out the knife from her chest and began repeatedly stabbing her until she stopped moving. She's dead, Izuku, now get up and kill her husband. Izuku slowly got to his feet, checking himself to see if anything was broken, and lucky for him nothing was. He then pulled the knife out her chest and headed to the bathroom, where he found Masaru checking in a cabinet trying to find first aid kit, throwing things onto the floor. And out of the way, Izuku walked up behind him and stabbed him in the back, lifting him off the ground only using one hand. He then ripped the knife out and let the body hit the floor. Izuku left the bathroom and headed upstairs to Bakugo's room, where he found it to be empty. He isn't here, Izuku, but he's probably at UA. Remember we read they turned that place into boarding school a few months back. So let's go there. The voice spoke to him, but he wasn't listening as he was staring at the first place medal his old bully had won for placing first in the sports festival. He walked over to the desk it was on and picked it up, holding it close to his face, looking at the markings and the big number 1 on it. He then grew angry and began to crush the medal in his hand, bending it using only the strength in his right hand. Izuku, we have to go. We don't have all night, so go back and get your mask on and go to UA. The boy threw the medal in the trash and walked back downstairs where he had killed Mitsuki, where he found the mask on the floor next to her. He picked it up and put it on, but before he walked out he saw the bowl of candy and couldn't resist grabbing a handful and shoving it in his pocket. Now he was ready. UA dorms. The common area was completely decorated for the party, and now Ashido, Yaoyorozu, Tsuyu, and Denki were making snacks for the party when Bakugo walked. What the hell are you nerds doing, and why did you decorate the place? Ashido shoved a flyer in his face and waved it around, annoying the explosive boy. We're throwing a huge Halloween party and there's going to be music, games, cake, and a costume competition where the winner gets a special prize if they win. Bakugo took the flyer out of her hand and burned it using his quirk before storming off to the elevator, where he ran into Itza, who had just stepped out. Hello Bakugo, I have someth dash, fuck off 4 eyes, I'm not in the mood to talk to you. Bakugo pushed him out of the way and entered the elevator. Heading to his room, Itza just sighed and continued his way to the kitchen, where he met up with the other 4 students. Why does he hate everyone so much? Denki asked, making sure Bakugo wasn't in earshot. He doesn't hate everyone, he's just very unsociable ribbit. Tsuyu said, also making sure Bakugo wasn't in earshot. May I have your attention please? Everyone went quiet and listened to the class president. If you didn't know already, a patient escaped from the Garuskant mental institution last night and he hasn't been caught yet. Well, they just released the identity of the man. His name is Izuku Midoriya. He's around our age and apparently he is extremely violent, so be careful if you plan to go out tonight. Yaoyorozu was the only one who seemed to care, while the other 3 just rolled their eyes. Denki was the first to speak on it. Dude, there's nothing to worry about. I bet that Izuku guy is miles away from us by now. Meanwhile with Izuku, Sing, I hear the drums echoing tonight, but she hears only whispers of some quiet conversation. She's coming in. 12:30 flight. The moonlit wings reflect the stars that guide me towards salvation. I stopped an old man along the way, hoping to find some long-forgotten words or ancient melodies. He turned to me as if to say, hurry boy, it's waiting there for you. It's gonna take a lot to take me away from you. There's nothing that 100 men or more could ever do. I bless the rains down in Africa. Gonna take some time to do the things we never had. The wild dogs cry out in the night as they grow restless. longing for some solitary company. I know that I must do what's right. As sure as Kilimanjaro rises like Olympus above the Serengeti, I seek to cure what's deep inside, frightened of this thing that I've become. It's gonna take a lot to drag me away from you. There's nothing that 100 men or more could ever do. I bless the rains down in Africa. Gonna take some time to do the things we never had. Stop singing. Hey Izuku, take a right here and then go 2 blocks down before taking a left. Aren't you glad we took Masaru's car instead of just walking there? We'll literally be there in an hour, so be ready and come up with a plan to get into the school. Izuku did what the voice told him, but he wished he hadn't listened when it said to turn on the radio. Alright, I love Dokken. The voice in his head said is. It began to sing. At this very moment Izuku thought about driving the car off a bridge to end his misery, but instead of doing that he simply pulled over and began bashing his head into the steering wheel. At the Alderai Elementary School, damn it, he's not here. Dr. Loomis and Detective Tsukachi were going room to room trying to find Izuku, but they found nothing. Eventually they both left the school and sat in the car, both upset they didn't find him. Listen Doc, is there anywhere else he might be? Loomis thought about it for a second, then remembered about how the officers had not checked in yet. Loomis was about to mention this, but an officer over the radio beat him to it. Detective Tsukachi, please pick up your radio. This is Tsukachi. Did you find Midoriya at his old apartment? The detective sat on the edge of his seat waiting for an answer. I'm sorry sir, but we haven't found him, but I'm afraid Officer Tamikawa and Officer Jin did and were killed. We also found the body of 2 people we're trying to identify now. The detective took a deep breath before responding. Ailiard, all heroes about the boy. He needs to be stopped, even if that means killing him, understand? I understand clearly sir, over and out. Loomis took another sip from his flask and sighed. Tsukachi was saddened by the news that Tamikawa was killed as he grabbed the flask out of Loomis's hand and took a long drink. We need to find him and fast before more people get hurt. The detective gave him back his flask, then a call came in over the radio. Tsukachi, you might want to come to Tedior Street, there's been 2 more murders. The detective picked up the radio again. We'll be right there. Can you identify the victims? Yes I can, Mitsuki Bakugo and Masaru Bakugo, both stabbed to death sir. After hearing those names Loomis knew where the boy was going. Detective, we must go to UA right now. I'll explain on the way, just start the car and drive. Tsukaka didn't argue with the doctor. He started up the car and started driving as Loomis began to explain. See, Izuku had mentioned a friend he used to have named Katsuki Bakugo. They were friends until Katsuki developed his quirk and Izuku didn't, and so Katsuki saw him as weak and bullied him for 2 whole years. He even tested his quirk out on the poor boy, leaving horrible scars on his back and chest. The detective was shocked to learn the truth about Izuku as he looked at Loomis with his jaw wide open. Let me get this straight Doc, the boy is quirkless, as in he has no special abilities. The doctor shook his head. Yes, quirkless from birth. Okay Loomis, just tell me anything else you know about the boy, and don't hold out anything and I'll use my quirk to make sure you're not. Tsukachi wanted to just know the truth and not be held in the dark anymore. There's not too much left to tell at this point. His father left him at a young age, all his friends outcast him for being quirkless, beaten by others on a daily basis, and finally his own mother wished she didn't have him. Those things are what made him who is today. That is all there is to say. The detective used his quirk to check if the doctor was hiding something, but his quirk came up with only the truth. Thanks for telling me the whole truth. Now let's get to that school and save the students' lives. The detective hit the gas, going faster than all the cars around him, for he knew Izuku already had a head start on him. Chapter 5, Killer Party. It was now 8 p.m. and the party had just begun, and students from Class 1A, 1B, 1C and support classes were there partying and having a great. Ashido was dressed up as Ellen Ripley from Alien, complete with AM-41, a pulse rifle prop she asked the support class to make for her, and they were willing to help. She was currently checking on the food, making sure there was enough snacks for everyone, when she realized something awful. We're out of queso. Great, she said sarcastically, running off to find Denki. When she found him, he was sitting on a couch dressed up as Charlie Nash from Street Fighter. Denki, I need you to do me a favor, run to the store and get some more queso. Here's some money. Denki got up from the couch and took the money. Yeah sure, I'll do it, but you know queso is just Spanish for cheese dash. Denki, just get it now, she yelled at him, causing the boy to run as fast as he could out of the building. Once he was outside the gates, he ran into Aizawa, who was leaning against the gate's wall. Where are you going, Denki? The teacher crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow at the boy. I'm going to the store real quick to get some more queso dip for the party. Did you paint your face like a cat? Aizawa had painted on whiskers and a cat nose. He even had a cat ear headband on. Why yes I did. You got a problem with it? The boy started to back away from his teacher in fear of what he might do. No sir, I'm gonna go now, bye. The boy ran down the street as fast as he could away from his homeroom teacher. Soon Aizawa got a call on his phone from and noticed it was from Midnight. Midnight, what do you want? Quick, I need your help. Something's gone terrible wrong, please meet me in class 1C. She hung up on him and he ran into the school. He reached the door and opened it to find her laying across a desk wearing a black lingerie with candles lighting the room. I'm glad you came, Aizawa. Aizawa looked at her unamused. We can't do this right now, we're supposed to be watching the kids and making sure they don't do anything bad. Midnight hopped off the desk and walked over to Aizawa, swaying her hips. You give those kids more attention than you do me. Don't you love me anymore? These words got to Aizawa as he kissed her and began to undress her. Of course I love you, why would you say something like that? He began to kiss her neck as he played with her tits. I guess I'm gonna have to show you how much you mean to me. This was the beginning of a wonderful night for the two of them. Back at the party, everyone was having a wonderful time partying and it was almost time for the costume contest. Ashido was doing her best to be a great host and making sure everything goes smoothly as possible. Where are you, Denki? She pulled out her phone and began to text him. Mina, did you get the queso dip yet? Denki, I can't find it. Mina, what do you mean you can't find it? Denki, I mean I can't find it, there's only soup. Mina, what do you mean there's only soup? Denki, it means there's only soup. Mina, then get out of the soup aisle. Denki, fine, you don't have to get angry. Denki, there's more soup. Mina, what do you mean there's more soup? Denki, there's just more soup. Mina, go into the next aisle. Denki, okay. Denki, there's still soup. Mina, where are you right now? Denki, I'm at soup. Mina, what do you mean you're at soup? Denki, I mean I'm at soup. Mina, what store are you in? Denki, I'm at the soup store. Mina, why are you buying queso at the soup store? Denki, fuck you. Ashido sighed and put her phone back in her pocket. That boy will be the death of me. Outside the soup store, Denki walked out of the soup store and headed down the street to the grocery store until a car pulled up next to him. He stopped and watched as a man around his height got out and stared at him. The figure was wearing a blue jumpsuit and an all-might mask and was completely covered in blood from head to toe. Wow dude, your costume is great. Usually I would say something like this is distasteful with All Might. Retiring and all, but your costume is so well done it sends chills down my spine. I mean, just look at that gunshot wound on your arm. Denki proceeded to poke the closed wound, causing it to start bleeding again. It even bleeds, holy shit, that is amazing, it even feels so real too. Well, I better get going. See ya dash. Denki felt a sharp pain in his stomach before realizing he had just been stabbed by the figure. He attempted to use his quirk to electrocute his attacker, but as soon as he got it activated in his hands, Izuku stabbed him again and again, causing the boy to fall to his knees. He looked at his hands that were now red from the blood of him holding his wounds before looking up one last at his attacker before falling over dead. Not bad. Izuku, now grab his UA identification card and let's get moving. Izuku did as told, searching the body for the wallet, then taking the identification badge and continuing on his way to the school. Soon he was at the front gates of the school he once dreamed of going to so he could become a hero, but that dream is long since past and have been replaced by anger. Izuku used the badge to open the giant gates and walk right inside the school grounds, where he headed to the dorms thinking that's where Bakugo would be. He walked through the doors into the dorms to find crowds of people everywhere, all dressed up in costumes, talking and dancing. This is perfect cover, Izuku. We can just walk through the party without anyone thinking twice about us. Izuku walked through the crowd of people searching for anyone that looked like Bakugo, but his attention was driven away by a pink-skinned girl standing on a couch with a mic. Alright everyone, who is ready for the costume contest? Everyone cheered and gathered around her, even Izuku. Now our judges for the competition are Yayo Rosa. She was dressed as a Victorian-era queen, Aoyama. He was dressed up as Yevgeny Borisovich Volgin from Metal Gear Solid, and finally me. Ashido smiled and struck a pose and everyone cheered. The three judges sat on the couch and called the first person up. First up is Ibara Shiozaka, dressed as Poison Ivy. She walked out in front of the group and she was met with roar from horny male students cheering for her. Izuku, I don't think Kaken is here, so we should get going. Izuku didn't listen as he kept watching. Up next is Pony Tsunatri's Rainbow Dash. Pony walked in front of everyone. She had painted skin blue and dyed her hair many colors to resemble a rainbow. She wore a white t-shirt with a cloud shooting out a rainbow lightning bolt and skinny jeans with rainbow lightning bolts on them. All the boys had nosebleeds and cheered louder. This was going to be a tough contest to judge. Chapter 6, Killer Party Part 2. After watching the contest, for a while Izuku grew bored and wandered off to look for Bakugo. Izuku knew he wasn't in the competition, it didn't fit his character, but he wasn't completely sure he was in that mental institution for 10 years and by now Bakugo could look completely different, or he could be wearing a costume making it hard to recognize him. He eventually found where the elevator was and hit the button summoning it. Once the doors opened, Izuku walked in, but he wasn't the only one, as a small purple-haired boy had walked in with him. "Hit floor 2 please," the small-looking child said as he stared at his phone. Izuku instead hit the closed door button and looked at the boy next to him, who was dressed up as Jotaro from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Diamond is Unbreakable. He then saw what the boy was looking at on his phone, and it was all upskirt shots and close-ups of different girls' boobs from the party. Oh god, he's a pervert. The boy noticed Izuku was looking at his pics over his shoulder and decided to let him look. "Oh, do you want to look? I don't mind if you do, just don't start jerking off next to me, okay, because that's just gross." The boy held his phone up so Izuku could see better and began swiping through the pics. "This one is of Pony, this one is of Momo, this one is of Jiro, and this one is my favorite." The picture was an upskirt of a girl who looked like a frog dressed up as Freddy Krueger. "It's of Tsuyu and she's the hottest girl in my class and one day I'ma hit that." The boy looked like he was drooling after he said, "Izuku, do me a favor and kill this perv." Izuku grabbed the boy by the head and smashed it against the elevator wall. He did this repeatedly until he could see that the boy's eyes had rolled to the back of his head and his skull had caved in. Izuku then searched the boy's pockets and found his ID. "Minoru Mineta, how do they let these type of guys into UA?" the voice questioned as Izuku hit the button going to the second floor of the drums. Once the elevator doors opened to the second floor, Izuku picked up Mineta's body and draped him over his shoulder like he was a lumberjack carrying wood he had just chopped. He found the shower and walked in to find the room was empty as he quickly put Mineta in one of the showers and closing the curtains before walking out back into the hallway. "Alright Izuku, here comes the hard part, finding Kaken's room." Izuku scanned all the doors to see if there was anything that might signify the room he was looking for, but most of the doors were not decorated, leaving him clueless. "I suggest you start with door closest to the elevator then go from there." Izuku agreed with the voice as he went to the first door and opened it to find it empty. He then tried the second door, which was locked, so he kicked it in to find nothing again. He then tried the third door, which was unlocked, but this time he found two people. A male student with a tail and what can only be assumed to be an invisible person, which would explain the floating clothes making out half naked. "What the hell are you doing in here? Doesn't anybody knock anymore?" The tailed boy jumped out of bed and walked up right in Izuku's face. "Listen, my girlfriend and I are trying to have a intimate moment here and you're ruining it, so would you kindly leave please?" Izuku put his hands on the boy's neck before twisting it and breaking it. The invisible girl screamed, attempting to run away, but Izuku was able to catch her. "Somebody help me, he's going to kill me." Izuku pulled out his knife and stabbed her in the stomach, and as the blood revealed where her skin was, he could stab her again and again until he felt satisfied with his kill. He then dragged their bodies to the shower room and put them with Mineta before continuing his search for Bakugo. "Keep searching, he's got to be in one of these rooms." Izuku returned to checking dorms, but very quickly became annoyed as he stopped checking to see if the doors were unlocked and skipped right to kicking them in. Every time he found nothing, his kicks would become more and more violent until he found Bakugo's room. He knew it was his because of the picture of Mitsuki and Masaru and Bakugo. Izuku held up the framed picture and another picture fell out, landing at his feet. He picked it up and saw that it was of him and Bakugo playing heroes when they were just 4 years old, before Bakugo got his quirk and began bullying him every day for 2 years. "I want to be All Might." "No, I'm All Might." "You were All Might last time, Kaken, it's my turn." "No way, you're too weak to be All Might, you can be another hero." "No, I want to be All Might." "How about we both be All Might, will that get you to stop whining?" Izuku watched as the younger version of him played with Bakugo, saving other kids and insects from pretend dangers. He looked around to see he was no longer in a dorm room but instead at the park he used to go to a lot to play when he was younger. "Look how cute they are playing together." Izuku looked over to see where the voice came coming from. He saw Mitsuki and his mother sitting on a bench watching them play. I know, we should get a photos of them playing. They took out cameras from the purses and began taking lots of photos of the two. Izuku actually felt pretty happy because he actually enjoyed this time in his life, but this happiness quickly faded when he heard someone yelling, "Oi, the fuck you think you're doing in my room?" Izuku quickly snapped out of his trance-like state and looked at the door to see him, the blonde hair, the blood-red eyes filled with rage, the smirk on his face filled with hate and disgust. The person in front of him was the one he had been searching for this entire time. "Hey dickhead, aren't you gonna say something or just stand there like a deer in a headlight?" Bakugo said as his face was full of anger, probably because he's looking at someone who kicked in and broke his door and was now looking through his stuff. A red-haired boy suddenly appeared next to the explosive boy and looked at the mess for himself. "Dude, breaking into other people's dorms is so unmanly. Shut the hell up, Kirishima." Bakugo snapped at the boy for no reason. "Well, I see he hasn't changed much," the voice said as Izuku watched the two boys argue over what seemed to be about nothing. "Look Baku bro, I'm sorry for making you angry. How about I beat up this guy for you and then help you fix up your door? How does that sound?" Bakugo usually wouldn't accept those type of offers, but he really wasn't in a fighting mood, so he decided to let him fight for him. "Fine, just make it fast, okay? I wanna go to bed soon." Kirishima walked into the room preparing for a fight. "Watch me end this fight in just one punch." Kirishima used his quirk to harden his fist as he punched Izuku right in the face, but the punch seemed to have had no effect. Kirishima punched again, but Izuku didn't budge. Instead he just stared at him. "I thought you were gonna end this in one punch. What the hell, Kirishima?" Bakugo said, annoying the red-haired boy as he went for a third punch, but Izuku caught his fist and wouldn't let go as much as Kirishima tried to free his hand. "What the hell, let go of me." Izuku began squeezing his hand, causing the red-haired boy to scream in pain as Bakugo laughed at his so-called friend's misery. Crunch! Izuku let go of Kirishima's hand as the boy fell to the ground, grasping it. His hand was turning purple and his fingers were bent out of place as he screamed in pain. Any enjoyment Bakugo got out of this was gone now as he watched his friend roll around on the ground holding his broken hand. "You broke his hand. Even with his quirk activated, you managed to break his hand with just your bare hand. Who the hell are you?" Bakugo was starting to spark from his hands as Izuku pulled out his knife. Kirishima managed to get to his feet, but he was still holding his broken hand and not paying attention to where he was and paid for it. Bakugo tried to fire off an explosion, but Izuku grabbed Kirishima and threw the boy like he was nothing at Bakugo, causing him to stop his attack and catch him. Bakugo pushed Kirishima off him and tried to attack, but Izuku grabbed his throat and pinned him against the wall and attempted to stab him in the face, but he was able to move enough so the knife went into the wall. Oh fuck. Chapter 7, What Happened to You? Oh shit. Izuku pulled the knife out of the wall and tried to stab Bakugo again, but before he could, the explosive boy put his hand up to his chest and set off a small explosion, forcing Izuku to let go of him. Izuku staggered back, but he was still standing despite the small up-close blast. Bakugo ran down the hallway trying to create space between the two of them, and once he was far enough he turned around and aimed his hand at him. "Die, you bastard." He set off a huge explosion down the hall, engulfing the hall in flames. The explosion was so powerful it shook the dorm building, causing everyone in the dorm to wonder what the hell that was as the fire alarms came along with the sprinklers soaking everyone. Once the smoke cleared, Bakugo looked down the hall to see that Izuku was still standing, but his jumpsuit and mask was scorched just like the hallway they were in. Bakugo readied himself for another attack, but there was no need, for his attacker fell to the ground seemingly to have passed out. Bakugo cautiously walked over to his mask, still in the position to set off another explosion if needed. Once he was close enough, he lightly kicked Izuku's body to see if he was awake, but he didn't move, so Bakugo took the opportunity to remove the All Might mask from his attacker, but what he found sent chills down his spine. No, it can't be. Bakugo fell back against the wall, staring at his former childhood friend who had just tried to kill him. "Izuku, what the hell happened to you? How and when did you become this monster?" Bakugo just sat there looking at his former friend, wondering how this happened. "I thought you moved away to America." He remembers his mother telling him that Izuku and his mother moved to America to live with his father, who had bought a home for them. He knew now that was a lie, and from the blue jumpsuit he was wearing he must have come from some sort of prison. "Did you get him?" Bakugo looked over to see a beaten Kirishima crawling out of his room. "Yeah, I got Izuku." Kirishima looked at him with confusion. "How do you know this guy's name?" Bakugo sighed. I knew him when we were kids, he was a friend. Kirishima looked at Izuku then back at Bakugo. Before pulling himself next to him, wait, is this the guy that's been all over the news? Izuku Midoriya is his full name, right? Bakugo grabbed the pointy-haired boy's shirt and pulled him close to his face. Wait, you knew? Bakugo was shaking Kirishima violently. Dude, it's been the top story all day on most of the major news stations, plus Itza went around the whole dorm and told everyone about it. Bakugo then remembered early today when he came back from the dorm after his morning exercises and usual stop for coffee at his favorite coffee shop, he ran into Itza. He remembered how he tried to tell him something but he totally told him to fuck off before going to his room. Hey Bakugo. The explosive boy snapped out of his thoughts and looked at Kirishima. How did he get onto the school grounds? How did break my hand despite my hardening quirk, and why does he want to kill you? Why is a good question. Flashback, Kakin, please don't do this. Shut up. Bakugo kicked Izuku hard in his ribcage as three other boys held down the green-haired boy's arms and legs. Lift up his shirt. The boys did what their explosive leader told them to do, lifting up Izuku's shirt to show his stomach and chest. Give him something to bite down on. One of the boys took off one of his shoes and pulled off his sock. Here, bite on this, Deku. The boy said, shoving his sock into the boy's mouth. Bakugo proceeded to put his hand on Izuku's chest, then taking a deep breath before letting off a small explosion, burning the boy badly. He bit down into the sock as hard as he could, his scream being muffled. Bakugo moved his hand to different parts of his body and letting off more small explosions, leaving burn marks the shape of his hand. Eventually Izuku couldn't take the pain and passed out. Ugh, what, he blacked out? Now what? One of the boys asked. And you burned about all of his chest and stomach area, and his back is still healing from 2 days ago, and his arms and legs are still healing as well. There's nothing left for to burn. Another boy said, but Bakugo just smiled at them as he grabbed Izuku by head, but before he could set off a explosion to his face, a teacher grabbed him and dragged him to the office where they called his parents, and he was suspended for a week. End of flashback. At that moment Bakugo realized something. He was a fucking psychopath when he was a kid, and the Japanese school system is very lenient on punishments. Hey look, isn't that Kaminari's ID? Bakugo saw the card but wasn't sure if Kirishima was right. Why don't you go grab it and see if it is? Kirishima looked at his friend with disgust on his face as he raised up his hand. Dude, look at my hand. All his fingers were bent and broken, oh god. Kirishima passed out from just looking at his broken hand, leaving Bakugo to get the ID by himself. He slowly approached Izuku and really fast swiped the ID card to find out it really was Kaminari's, and by the little bit of blood that's on it he could guess that the electric boys wasn't living anymore. While Bakugo was distracted by the card, Izuku had awakened and grabbed the knife but then pretended to still be knocked out. I wonder if there's anything else he has on him. Bakugo had just made the biggest mistake he could make. He reached over to search Izuku for more info, and for this he was stabbed in his side, for he had fallen right into the green-haired boy's trap. Bakugo fell back clutching the knife that was in his side as Izuku crawled on top of him and began beating his face like it was a punching bag. With every strike Izuku thought of all the horrible things Bakugo did to him as a kid, giving more force behind his punches. Izuku had beaten him to the point where he was still conscious but could barely move a limb, but just to make sure that Bakugo didn't get the strength to strike him again, he grabbed the explosive boy's arm and bent it until it broke, and then moving on to the next arm and doing the same. Izuku then pulled out the knife from Bakugo's side and raised it up over his head, preparing to finally kill him and exact his revenge. Wait. Izuku stopped and listened to what the voice in his head had to say. This death is too good for this scumbag. I have a better idea. Let's find something to wrap around his neck and hang him from the balcony so everyone can see. Izuku liked that idea as he put his All Might mask back on and grabbed Bakugo by his hair. He dragged him into his room and looked for something good to tie around his neck, but all he could find was bed sheets, which Izuku settled on. He began tying the bed sheets to try to make it into a better noose. I'm sorry. Izuku stopped what he was doing and looked down at Bakugo, who looked like he was getting closer to death with his arms broken, face busted with teeth missing and a bleeding knife wound. I'm sorry, Izuku, for all I've done to you. It was too late for forgiveness as Izuku wrapped one end of the bed sheet noose around Bakugo's neck and the other around an end of the balcony. He picked up Bakugo, lifting him over his shoulder, and walked over to the edge. Midoriya, don't do it. Izuku turned around and saw Dr. Loomis pointing a gun at it. Bang! Loomis fired off a shot, hitting Izuku right in his chest, causing him to drop Bakugo before he could throw him over. Bang! Loomis fired another round, hitting the boy in his lower chest. Bang! The third shot hit the boy and caused him to fall off the balcony and hit the hard ground. The good doctor ran over and looked over the balcony to see Izuku's body motionless and laying there. He then helped Bakugo up and removed the quickly made noose before introducing himself. My name is Dr. Samuel Loomis and you must be Katsuki Bakugo. I would say it's nice to meet you, but from what Midoriya has told me about you I think I rather not. Before Bakugo could respond he passed out. Tsukachi ran into the room. Looking at the mess and the near-death boy laying on the ground, we got to get this boy to a hospital quick. Where is Midoriya? I shot him and he fell off the balcony, he's dead. Loomis picked up the boy and began dragging him out of the room while Tsukachi looked over the balcony. Where is he? Loomis dropped the boy and ran over and looked over edge to see Izuku was gone but a small blood trail was left behind. Oh god. Chapter 8, You Can't Kill the Boogeyman. Izuku, Izuku, Izuku. Izuku's eyes shot open. He raised his head and looked around to see he was laying on a table with shelves filled with expensive wines surrounding him. He attempted to get up but his arms and legs were chained down so he couldn't move, and that's when he saw her. You're awake, Izu. Toga ran into the room and jumped on top of him forgetting about his injuries and just started hugging him. I'm so glad you're okay, you almost died but I was able to get you out of UA and get you somewhere safe. Then I was able to remove the bullets and stop the bleeding. She hugged him tighter causing some of his bandaged wounds to bleed. He then raised one of his hands to show her the chains. Oh, I almost forgot about that, hold on. She reached into her shirt and pulled out a key. Really sorry Izu, it was just a precaution in case you woke up and freaked out. She unlocked his chains then helped him to his feet so he could stand, but he felt something was off because he was super cold, and that's when he noticed he was completely naked. He blushed as he turned and looked at Toga for answers, who was blushing and smiling at him. Well, I had to take off your costume to take out the bullets. Izuku kept staring at her waiting to know why his pants and underwear were also off. Oh, you wanna know about your pants? I may have gotten a little carried away with the taking off your clothes part. I just couldn't resist. Izuku quickly found his jumpsuit and put it on before looking for his mask, but it wasn't anywhere in the room. Looking for this. The voice didn't sound like Toga's, it was more masculine and deeper. He turned to see a man with blue hair and very chapped lips standing in the doorway holding his All Might mask in his hand. Hello, my name is Shigaraki and I am the leader of the League of Villains. Please come with me for you must be parched and starving. Shigaraki threw Izuku the mask before walking out of the room with Toga leaving him all alone. You need to eat, Izuku, regain your strength, then we'll go find Kaken. Izuku agreed with the voice as he walked out of the wine cellar and into the bar area. He looked around at the place and noticed it was mostly empty except for him and 3 other people. There was Toga who was playing pinball and Shigaraki who was sitting at the bar and a lizard man working the bar who looked pissed off. Come sit at the bar with me so we can discuss business. Izuku walked over to the bar and had seat next to Shigaraki. The lizard guy slammed a plate of food in front of him and Izuku started digging in, not caring that the lizard guy was giving him an angry look. Glad you enjoy the food, but we need to have a talk. It takes some serious balls to do what you did, sneaking into UA and trying to kill one of their top students like you were some type of Dark Brotherhood assassin on a contract. I need people like you who are not just dedicated but also strong and merciless, so will join me in my quest to rid this world of pro heroes and create a better society. Izuku kept shoveling food and chugging water down his throat as Shigaraki waited for an answer. Well, are you gonna answer him or what? The lizard guy became very upset, but Izuku kept eating. Hey, I'm talking to you. The lizard guy grabbed Izuku's wrist and made him put down his food, which was a big mistake. Izuku grabbed the nearest sharp object he saw, which was a corkscrew, and stabbed the lizard guy in the eye. Izuku was about to crawl over the bar and stab him some more, but Shigaraki stopped him. Wow wow wow, no need for any death, we're all friends here. Besides, Iguka learned his lesson. Izuku didn't care anymore, so he put on his mask and headed to the door leading outside, but Toga grabbed onto his arm. Don't leave yet, Izuku, we have a plan to help you, just wait a sec, okay? Izuku stopped and turned around to look at Shigaraki, who was now standing. We can help you, but you gotta join the league first, so what do you say? Will you join us? Later at the hospital. We shouldn't be here, we should be out there looking for Midoriya. Loomis said as him and Tsukachi waited outside the room where Bakugo was currently being treated for injuries. Half the police force and most of the pro heroes in the area are looking for him, but what I really want to know is how he survived the fall plus all the rounds you put into him. Tsukachi asked, hoping to find an honest answer. Midoriya has done nothing but train for 9 years, and in that time I've watched his strength increase rapidly unlike anyone else. Despite being quirkless, I've seen him take down people with strong quirks. Hell, I've even withstand a Tazur. He is a true monster. Wait, hold on a second, the boy who has killed multiple people is a quirkless. Before Loomis could answer, a nurse walked out of the room with a clipboard in hand. We were able to fix his arms, but he's not allowed to use his quirk for a while or else he's gonna break them even more. Thank you, can we see him? I'm sorry, but he's out cold from the sedative and won't be able to answer you. The nurse apologized and left the detectives alone. That's just great. All this time wasted just to find out he's knocked out. Just fucking great. Loomis left the hospital looking like he was about to bust a blood vessel. As Tsukachi was leaving, he ran into Eraserhead and Midnight, who were rushing down the hall. Mind telling me where the hell you two were during while this was going down? Aizawa just kept walking while Midnight looked down in shame as she followed behind him. I guess not. Tsukachi shook his head as he continued down the hall and exited the hospital to join up with Loomis, who was outside smoking. Look, you need to calm down. Loomis looked at the detective with eyes full of hatred. Calm down, fuck you. You tell me to calm down when he's still out there. Probably killing someone as we speak, and it's all my fault. Before he could finish his rant, Tsukachi punched him in the face, knocking Loomis back. Sorry, but you were ranting like a madman. Loomis recovered fast and tackled the detective to the ground. They began rolling in the snow trying to punch each other, but it kind of resembled two overweight pandas rolling in the dirt. Eventually other officers saw the fight and came over to stop the two of them from fighting, and that's when they heard it. Everyone stopped fighting and looked at the ice cream truck that just pulled into the near empty parking in front of them. What the fuck? One of the officers said while unholstering his gun. The window to the ice cream truck opened and there was Toga wearing a psycho mask from Borderlands and Spinner, who was dressed up as Stain as usual. They pulled out RPKs and began mowing down the crowd of police, not giving them a chance to even fire back at them. The two kept firing until they were both out of ammo. Happy Halloween, Toga said as Shigaraki hit the gas and drove off just as soon as Midnight and Eraserhead arrived to see the pile of dead police officers in front of them. You stay here and check if any of them are alive. I'll go after them. Before Aizawa could say anything, Midnight jumped onto her motorcycle and left to follow the truck. Aizawa began checking to see if anyone was still alive from the drive-by, but it seemed like everyone had died until he felt a hand latch onto his left foot. He looked down to see Loomis was still but had been shot in the arm and his ear had been shot off. But help, he said before passing out. Aizawa quickly picked him and brought him into the hospital, where a bunch of nurses came out, put him on a stretcher so that they could easily move him to the emergency room. Little did they know that while all this was happening, Izuku killed the guards who were guarding the back entrance and entered the hospital undetected. Chapter 9, You Can't Erase Me. Bakugo, wake up sweetie, it's time for breakfast. Bakugo opened his eyes at his mother's call and quickly hopped out of bed and ran straight to the kitchen. He sat down at the table and his mother served him pancakes, which he proceeded to devour in a few minutes. This seems familiar. He then quickly went back to his room and changed into some day clothes before his mother took him to preschool. When he arrived, he jumped out of the car, waved goodbye to his mom and headed to class, but something felt off. As he entered his classroom, he saw everyone whispering to each other except for Midoriya, who seemed rather disturbed. Yo Bakugo, did you hear the news? He looked at his classmate who he couldn't remember the name of, and then it hit him. I remember this day now. What news? Why did I ask that? Why am I living this over again? Izuku is quirkless, he'll never develop a quirk in his life. Isn't that funny? No, that's not funny. Why would you even think that is funny? Yeah, that is funny. No, it isn't. I don't want to see this anymore. Soon all the kids surrounded Midoriya and began making fun of him and showing off their quirks in front of him. Then Bakugo remembered what came next. I don't want to say it. Please God, I'm sorry for what I've done, just please don't make me relive this moment. Bakugo walked over to Midoriya's desk and slammed his hand down on it, causing the quirkless boy to jump. You know, the name Izuku doesn't really suit you anymore. How about we call you Deku? The said boy looked up with watery eyes and asked him, what does Deku mean? Please don't answer that, he's your friend. It means useless. Midoriya began crying as the whole class began chanting, Deku, Deku, Deku. Please stop. Deku, Deku, Deku. Stop it. Deku, Deku, Deku. Stoop. Wake up. Bakugo woke up screaming but stopped as he realized he was in a hospital bed and it was just a dream. He looked around the empty room looking for an answer for what happened and how he got here, but there was none as he tried to move his arms but he couldn't. Noticing they were in casts that go up his entire arms. He got up out of the bed, removing his heart rate monitor, and tried to stand, but he was really wobbly sedative they gave him while he was asleep. He opened the door to his room and walked into the large hallway and saw a nurse running his way. "What are you doing up? You're supposed to be in bed." She stopped and pulled out a walkie-talkie that was on her and contacted the other night nurses as he just stood there. False alarm. He didn't flatline, he just got up and removed his heart monitor. "How did I get here?" he asked her, but she didn't answer as she tried to get him back in his room. "All your questions will be answered later, but for now please, return to your room." As she finished her sentence, Izuku had came up behind her and slit her throat and watched her as she fell to the ground and squirmed, trying to cover the wound in her throat. When she finally stopped moving, Izuku turned his attention to Bakugo, who was standing there horrified at the scene. Izuku began walking towards him, gripping his knife tightly, preparing himself for a fight. Bakugo raised his arms the best he could and used his quirk, but instead of setting off an explosion directed at Izuku, his casts exploded off and his arms, leaving him screaming in pain. "Looks like Kukin can't use his quirk. That gives us the advantage. Kill him." Izuku listened to the voice and walked slowly towards Bakugo, who was trying to crawl away. Once he was close enough, he stepped on his broken arm, making him scream as he applied more and more weight onto his foot. Once he was done having his little fun, Izuku lifted up his knife and tried to finally end his mission of revenge, but he was stopped. "Oh, what now?" Izuku looked at his hand to see it was wrapped in some type of cloth. "You're not killing any more people tonight." It was Eraserhead, and his eyes were red as blood as he charged at Izuku. "I'm sick of distractions, Izuku. Kill the hero and get on with murdering Kukin." Izuku quickly tried to slash the hero, but it missed, and Eraserhead began wrapping Izuku's hands together so he couldn't punch or try to stab him. Once Izuku cut the cloth, Izuku looked at his restraints and studied them. "You're not breaking free from that, so just give up now." The pro hero hoped this would be the end, but he was sadly mistaken. Izuku's arms began to shake before the bonds that restrained him were violently ripped apart. Izuku was speechless at the sight of his steel alloy cloth being broken like it was made of paper. "Bakugo, get out of here now." The explosive boy listened and managed to get to his feet and began running away down the hall, but Izuku didn't even bat an eye. All his focus was on the pro hero right in front of him. "Looks like you're a tougher than I thought," he said, putting on his yellow goggles. Izuku cracked his neck and walked calmly towards him, and Izuku did the same until they were at least a foot apart. They stared at each other for a few seconds before Izuku took the first swing, but Izuku quickly dodged and punched him in the face. Every time Izuku took a swing or a slash, he was met with a punch to the face, and after around 20 punches he couldn't stand straight and became wobbly. Izuku noticed this and went for a finishing blow as he did a jumping spin kick, but his foot was met with Izuku's blade instead of his face. The hero fell to the floor but quickly recovered, rolling away, gaining some distance from Izuku before charging back into the fight, but this time Izuku pulled out his knife so he could block the attacks more easily. Sparks flew as their blades clashed over and over again, but Izuku clearly had more skill with his as he managed to knock the knife out of Izuku's hand and stab him in the chest. Despite that he had in his knife and his chest, Izuku tackled Izuku through the doors to an operating room, knocking into a tray of scalpels and busting open tanks of ether and oxygen gas. Izuku pulled out the knife from his chest and used the knife on Izuku, stabbing him in the chest and twisting the blade. Izuku spat up blood as he quickly grabbed a scalpel that had fallen next to him and stabbed Izuku in the eye. "Bet you didn't cough's blood like that." Izuku pulled out the knife from Izuku's chest, rolling off of him, grasping the scalpel in his eye. "Okay Izuku, on 3 we pull it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Izuku let out a scream and he pulled out the scalpel as the voice said 3. Blood squirted out the eye hole of his mask, painting it red. While distracted from removing the scalpel, Izuku got to his feet with another scalpel in hand and tried to stab Izuku, but his hand was grabbed at the wrist. Izuku used the scalpel in his free hand, stabbing the hero in the throat. The blood squirted out of Izuku's throat as he tried to wrap his neck to stop the bleeding, but doing so left him wide open as Izuku stabbed him again with the scalpel. The hero fell to the ground as Izuku began stabbing him repeatedly until he was sure he had killed the hero. "Looks like he's done for good. Nice job killing your first pro hero." Izuku got up to his feet and headed for the door, but he was suddenly stopped. He looked at his left foot to see it was wrapped in Izuku's cloth. He turned around to see the hero on the ground holding a lighter in his hand. You're not gonna kill coughs up blood any more people. Chapter 10. There's no such thing as the boogeyman. Detective Tainuma arrived with his squad at the hospital after receiving a call about gunshots being heard at the hospital. They were met by Kamui Woods and Death Arms, who were looking at the pile of dead police officers before them. What the hell happened? Where's Tsukashi? The two heroes looked at him with their heads held down. I'm sorry, but he didn't make it, Death Arms said, rubbing the back of his neck. Tainuma looked over at the pile of bodies to see his friend covered in blood and bullet holes. Where the hell were you guys? The two heroes looked at each other before answering. We were out on our separate patrol dash. Don't you give me that shit. You weren't on patrols, you were at MT Ladies' party. I can smell the beer on you too. Kamui kept his head down in shame while Death Arms tried to defend himself. Look, this isn't our fault. If you would have called us then dash dot. Shut up. Tainuma interrupted again with even more angry in his voice. All day today the news has reported on this guy and his victims. We've been talking over the radio constantly about this, and you know both of you have access to that. Maybe if you two weren't partying, then maybe you could have stopped this guy before he broke into UA and killed some of the students. Before Tainuma could scold the heroes anymore, the doors to the hospital opened. Grabbing their attention, Bakugo ran out of the hospital looking like he has been through hell with his arms burnt and broken. Holy shit, kid, what happened? Bakugo took deep breaths before answering. Aizawa is fighting him alone. Please help him. When the two heroes heard that, they immediately ran into the hospital to help Eraserhead fight Izuku, while Tainuma stayed with Bakugo and helped him over to his car. Once he got Bakugo sitting down on the hood of his car, he inspected his broken arms before wrapping him in a blanket. Listen kid, with those two helping Eraserhead, I'd say the killer has no chance in hell of beating them. Bakugo didn't care who or how it was done, but someone had to stop Izuku from killing any more people, even if it means killing him. Yeah, you're probably right. No way he can beat all three. Boom. A part of the hospital exploded and burst into flames. Somebody call the damn fire department or a pro hero, just get this fire out now. Tainuma began yelling at his squad as the night staff and the patients began evacuating the hospital. After a while the fire department arrived with backdraft and they began trying to put out the fire, while at the same time Death Arms and Kamui Woods returned from trying to find Aizawa. Where's Eraserhead? Tainuma asked, but the heroes didn't say anything but hold up a burnt scarf. The detective sighed at the news. Well, somebody has to break the news to her. The three looked over at Midnight, who had returned from chasing the villains with little success, and with a big sigh Kamui walked over to her. They watched as he explained to her what happened, and she began crying before falling to her knees. I can't imagine what pain she must going through right now. Death Arms and Tainuma agreed in silence as they watched Kamui try to comfort her the best he could. No. The two turned around and looked at Bakugo, who was staring directly at the fire. What do you mean no, kid? Bakugo didn't reply to Death Arms. Instead he kept looking at the fire. He can't be still alive. He couldn't have survived that. Tainuma looked at the entrance of the hospital and saw what Bakugo was looking at. From the flames Izuku walked out completely on fire and holding a scalpel in hand, ready to kill anyone in his path. Holy shit, was all Death Arms could manage to say as he watched the killer walk towards them despite his flesh burning off, but suddenly he stopped. Izuku dropped the scalpel before falling to his knees and hitting the ground face first. Firefighters quickly put the killer out before EMTs rushed in and began treating him, eventually strapping him onto a stretcher and putting him in the back of an ambulance. Come on kid, it's over. Let's get your wounds check out. Tainuma turned to face Bakugo, who was just staring straight at the ambulance carrying Izuku. Kid, you okay? Hey kid, hello. The detective shook him a little so he wouldn't hurt him. The kid's in shock. Get him some help. Death Arms picked up the explosive boy and carried him over to another ambulance, but he never took his eyes off Izuku until they put him under to help with the pain. 10 years later, was that last time you saw him? Yes. Have you made any attempt to see him again? No. The therapist put down his notes and rubbed his head. Listen Katsuki, if you're ever wanting to fix the problems in your life, then you need to conquer this one first. I bet if you go up and see Izuku and talk to him, you'll feel a lot better and more relieved. Bakugo sighed, knowing his therapist was right about his problems. I know I should go see him, but if I do, what do I say? The therapist made a small smile and put his hand on Bakugo's shoulder. When you see him, you'll know what to say. A timer went off signaling their session was up. Bakugo thanked him and left the office, where he was met by a few fans who wanted autographs and pictures with him. Once he was done, he got into his car and began punching the steering wheel until he was calm again and able to think straight. "I'll do it," he said to himself as he started the car and headed to Tartarus, where Izuku was currently imprisoned. Once he got there, he was forced to go through security checkpoint after checkpoint until he was finally cleared to see him. As he walked by multiple cells containing S-rank criminals, he finally reached Izuku's cell. "Alright, you got 10 minutes, yell if you need anything." The guard walked off, leaving him alone outside Izuku's cell. He looked at Izuku, who was facing the back of the cell just staring at the wall. He observed the burn marks on his arms and neck, remembering the way he walked out of the hospital completely on fire with his eyes set on killing him. "He's not gonna talk to you." Bakugo looked over in the cell next to Izuku's and saw Stain, the hero killer. He doesn't talk to anybody. 10 years he just sat there in silence. Bakugo just ignored Stain's words. Even if Izuku didn't talk back, he had to try. He looked back to Izuku, who was still just staring at the back of the cell, and took a deep breath. "Hello, Izuku."